Chapter 14. Friday, late afternoon. Once inside the house, Doreen reset the alarms, put a tea bag in a cup, and put water on to boil in the electric tea kettle. She still had Mac on the phone. "I'm inside, safe and sound. The alarm was set and I've reset it." "Good. You take care." "Yeah, I will," she said. "When are you coming for the medallion?" "I'm heading into the office right now." His voice was distracted. "Depends on how late it is when I'm done." "Well, it's not late right now," she said, "although with that cloudy sky moving in now, it seems like it is. If I'm only about an hour longer at work, I'll swing by afterward and grab it." He hung up without saying goodbye. She wasn't sure what was on his docket that he would go by the office at this hour, but he juggled a lot of cases. As she let her tea steep, she carefully laid the medallion on the kitchen table and studied it. Thaddeus immediately walked over for a closer look. Although it was dirty, the motif on the metal was clearly visible. She thought about a young man who had hung on to probably the only possession he had left of his father's, and she thought about what circumstances it would take for Johnny to let that memento go. She kept coming back to the fact that Johnny wouldn't have given up the medallion willingly. So potentially an argument at the bench where he'd been sitting. "It's too darn bad," she said to Muggs. She got up, seeing all the animals sitting here, staring at her. Okay. I see you guys haven't been fed yet." She puttered around the kitchen getting dinner for the three of them. It was past time for her to get some food too. But the fridge hadn't been restocked, and she desperately needed to go shopping yet again. "How come shopping consumes so much of my time?" she asked. "It should be fast and easy." She knew those newfangled delivery services were available, where she could order online to get the groceries she wanted. She wasn't quite ready for that yet. Nor could she justify the delivery fee. With the animals happily munching away, she made herself a simple sandwich with raw veggies on the side and sat at the kitchen table to eat. Her gaze kept returning to the medallion. And her mind kept revisiting where it had been found, then took her to the patch of bare ground under the original site for the bench. Somebody could have buried the body on Penny's property, but anyone other than George and Penny digging up the yard would have been seen and considered suspicious, so that narrowed it down to Johnny's family. Penny wasn't strong enough to manhandle a body, although she might have helped George. But then, why would George keep up the pretenses of looking for his younger brother? He'd already know where his younger brother was. He could have just turned his back on the whole farce and ignored it. Although, if he'd killed his brother, he'd have tried to throw off suspicion by acting as the grieving brother. Doreen knew in her heart that Johnny was probably dead, and she figured Penny knew it too. When Doreen was done eating, she washed her few dirty dishes, then glanced around the house, ensuring everything was still where it belonged. After the same intruder had gotten inside her house twice, maybe that third time too, she felt more than a little paranoid. As she prepared to go upstairs and to start in on Nan's closet again, Mac pulled up. Muggs barked at the door, but his tail wagged happily. She walked to the front door, undid the security, and held up the Ziploc baggie for him. He looked at it and frowned. "It's a nice piece," she said. "Do you think it's real gold?" He nodded. "Not only is it likely real gold, that could be a gem in the center. But I can't be sure. Which means, if somebody saw it, they would have most likely stolen it." "Yes." His frown deepened. "Maybe take it and see if any bloodstains are on it?" she asked hopefully. He just raised his eyebrows. She shrugged. "You don't have anything else to go on. You might as well take a look at this." It was his possession. It was found at the place where he was last seen. Maybe he was injured there. There could be blood. "I'll take it back to the office," but it was his, so his skin cells would have transferred to his medallion. So that's to be expected. He pocketed the bagged-up item and stepped back, looking around the living room. I'll be glad when these expensive antiques are gone. Hopefully on Monday, she said with a nervous laugh. Now it's like sleeping in a mausoleum. I'm so worried about anything getting damaged that I don't sit on it and I don't use it. I just walk around and give each piece a wide berth. Sounds like the right thing to do. He turned and walked down the porch steps. She watched him go, hating that sense of loss she often felt when he left. He gave her a wave as he got into his vehicle, backed out of her driveway, and drove around the cul-de-sac, disappearing from sight. With a heavy sigh, she stepped back inside. Her grandmother called just then. "How is Doreen?" Nan asked. "And how's that lovely Mac?" "I'm sure Mac is fine," Doreen said, desperate to keep her voice neutral. "And I'm tired, but I'm good. I took the long way around, walking back from your place." "My place?" "Sorry, I'm more tired than I thought," she said with a heavy sigh. "I was over at Mac's mother's doing the gardening, then ended up at Penny's." "Oh," she said. "I was hoping to invite you for dinner." "I just had a sandwich and veggies," Doreen said in frustration. She'd have loved to have had dinner with Nan. "Well, how about cake then?" "I can always go for some cake and a cup of tea." "Do you have a reason for calling?" "Do I need a reason?" Nan asked craftily. "No. But something else seemed to be in your tone," Doreen said. "As if to say you found out something." "Of course I did," Nan said firmly. "Do you have any idea how much information is tied up in all the crazy heads here?" "Which is one of the reasons why I asked you to talk to the residents," Doreen responded in a dry tone. "It is still fairly early," Nan said. "Why don't you come on down? Maybe by the time you get here, you'll be hungry again." Doreen chuckled. "I did work hard earlier today, so sure. Why not?" She gave in easily. "Hopefully you'll have some good information to give me." With the animals fed, they all wanted to lie down and sleep. She was of two minds as to whether she should take them, but it felt odd to go to Nan's without them. Forcing them out again and carrying Thaddeus, she walked slowly toward her grandmother's place. When she got there, she found the remaining stepping stones were still in a row, leading from the sidewalk to Nan's patio. She crossed over them, in case the gardener came out and told her off again. Nan was watching her. She chuckled with delight when she saw the whole crew cross the lawn. Muggs raced toward Nan to give her a bark of welcome and a kiss. Nan didn't seem to mind the slobbery wet kisses Muggs delivered on a regular basis. Goliath, on the other hand, appeared to be jealous, and hopped up into Nan's lap and completely overwhelmed the space. Thaddeus was more concerned with the cake on the table. Although he had just eaten, he was working away on a corner of the treat. "I do love these animals," Nan said. "They truly are a delight." "They are indeed," Doreen said. She gave Nan a hug and sat down to see a pot of tea steeping. "And I like having you close," Nan said with a big smile. She motioned at the teapot. "By the time I make it, you're almost here." "Perfectly steeped," Doreen said. "It's a bit longer than that, but who's counting minutes?" "Exactly." Nan leaned forward. "So what else have you found out?" "You mean, what else have you found out? Right?" Doreen asked. "Not a whole lot," Nan said. "But you went to see Penny, and you also talked to Mac's mom, so both of those ladies must have known something." "Do you know anything about Alan Hornby?" "No," Nan said, frowning. "He was another one of those young men in Johnny's friend group, right?" "Yes, he was," Doreen said. "More of a fringe member, though." Also found out that George helped identify the two boys killed in the car accident." "Well, that's interesting," Nan said. "I wonder why he did that." "I think to make sure it wasn't Johnny," Doreen said. "It was Johnny's car the boys were driving when they died." Is there any reason why George would misidentify the victims? Nan pursed her lips and stared across the green lawn. To Doreen, it looked like Nan stared across the years. I wondered that myself, Doreen said. But there wouldn't be any reason to do so. He'd have to be hiding his own actions or trying to protect somebody else. Most of us would do a lot to protect those we love, Nan said with a beaming smile. True enough, Doreen said. But that still doesn't explain why George would in this case. The boys were friends of his brother's. I don't imagine there was any great loyalty or attachment on George's part. But if George wanted his brother out of his life, then that's a good way to do it, Nan said with surprising insight. Doreen chuckled. Sure. At least then George would know Johnny was gone, but nobody else would. However, according to Penny, George spent his life and a lot of money trying to track down his brother. So I can't imagine George would have put that much effort into keeping up the pretense. Not after the first few years. No, Nan said. But then you never know. A tiny bird-like voice called out to Nan from the inside of her apartment. Nan? Nan. Nan's face turned thunderous. She lowered her voice and said, Don't answer. Doreen raised an eyebrow and studied her grandmother's face. Why not? She asked in a whisper. She's always bugging me, Nan said. Maisie is a pest. Maybe Maisie is lonely, Doreen corrected. Humph. Nan snorted as she settled back. Oh, there you are. A tiny woman with a shock of lavender hair stepped through Nan's living room onto the patio. She turned her bright face toward Doreen. You must be the granddaughter. Yes, Doreen said with a smile. I'm Doreen. Maisie caught sight of Thaddeus eating the bread. Oh my. Her smile fell away. Isn't that dirty? Isn't what dirty? Nan snapped. She stroked Thaddeus's back and shoulders defensively. Thaddeus is hungry. Why should you care? Doreen was quite perturbed at her grandmother's manner. She'd never seen her like this. That may be, Maisie said with a sniff, but that bird is walking all over your table. Well, honestly, Goliath would too, Doreen said with a laugh. If we let him, that is. Maisie looked horrified at the idea. I guess you don't have any pets? Maisie shook her head. No. I could never handle the hair or the dirtiness. Animals carry disease, you know, she said in a conversational tone as if thinking, and heaven only knew where she got that thought from, that the two women listening to her would share her point of view. Animals are terrible that way. Nan rolled her eyes toward Doreen, who was hard-pressed to keep the smile off her face. Maisie, what did you want? For a moment, Maisie looked confused. Nan pointed back at her living room. There's a reason I didn't answer the door, dear. I have company. Maisie gave her a finger pointing. Hardly. Doreen is family. That's not the same thing at all. Watching the play between the two women was fascinating. It gave Doreen a different insight into her grandmother's life here. Doreen didn't understand the relationship between the two women, but it looked obvious it wasn't all that easy or smooth. I'm pretty sure Joe is looking for you, Nan said. Oh, that's all right, Maisie said blithely. He's in my room, resting. She batted her eyes at Nan. He does need his rest afterward, doesn't he? And then, with a sweet smile and a chuckle, she disappeared. Doreen gave a horrified gasp. Did she mean what I think she meant? Nan nodded. The two of them are carrying on like they're 18, she said. I don't mind in the least, but it would be nice if they kept it to themselves. But Maisie is one of those shrieking partners. Oh dear, Doreen said, struggling to stifle the laughter threatening to pour outward. Most people like that are attention getters. Nan nodded. I couldn't have said it better. So is it just Maisie who pisses you off? Nan gave an irritable shrug of her shoulders. Not really, she said, but Joe used to be my friend. The emphasis was on the last word. Fascinated, Doreen studied Nan's face. Did Joe ditch you for Maisie? She asked gently. Nan shrugged. No, I ditched him first. But he sure didn't take long to pick up with Maisie. I rather imagine it has a lot to do with the perception of time, Doreen said. When you're here, I think mortality is a little more evident. Maybe you guys don't wait the usual length of time that goes along with a breakup. Some men never wait, Nan said with a sniff. And Joe is one of them. That's good to know, Doreen said. At least now you won't make the mistake of going out with him again. Not too many men in here are any good anymore, Nan said. I do keep the blue pills in my drawer. But it's kind of depressing when you have to give them to the men yourself. Doreen sat back, choking on the words threatening to come out. Don't look so shocked, my dear, Nan said dryly. You'd be a lot better off if you and Mac would get over the courtship part of your relationship too. A good old romp in bed would suit you two just fine. Doreen laughed out loud. Thanks for the advice, Nan, she said cheerfully. Not that I'm looking for any. Of course you aren't, Nan said. Which is why it's so much easier to give it to you. If you were to ask my advice, that'd be a pain in the ass. But the fact that you're not means I get to comment as I see fit. Then she broke into bright laughter. There wasn't a lot Doreen could say to that. At least Nan was laughing again. Did Joe or Maisie know any of the kids in the gang back then? I don't know why they would, she said with a curl of her lip. They're both newcomers. What does that mean? Doreen asked with a laugh. Have they only been here for 20 years? Nan straightened her back and looked at her granddaughter. I hear the laughter in your voice, but until you've lived in Kelowna as long as I have, you don't understand how the newcomers are so very different from all of us oldies. Well, if they are newcomers after 20 years, Doreen said, I must be in the toddler category. You're my family, Nan said. And that changes things entirely. I'm sure Joe and Maisie have family too, she said gently. Whatever, Nan said. Then she giggled. But I did take $50 off Maisie earlier. You what? Doreen was afraid to ask. I bet her about Joe and a blue pill. Oh dear. Nan, I really don't want to hear about this. It's all right, but that's why Maisie came over. She was trying to tell me, in her way, that he didn't need the blue pill. So how did you earn $50 off her? I bet he wouldn't need it, Nan said, because I had given him the blue pill earlier. You gave him a blue pill so he could have sex with Maisie? Doreen asked in shock. And then you bet Maisie he wouldn't need one when she went to bed with him? Now you got it, Nan said. I think that's cheating, Nan. But a part of her wanted to giggle out loud. All is fair in love and war, Nan said complacently.